For analysis on this story, let's turn now to Joseph Williams. He's a former senior editor for US News and World Report. Joseph, thank you for your time. Now, the footage is certainly revealing, displaying extraordinary brutality of those police officers. What do you make of the videos that was released on Friday?
I was just as shocked as everyone else. They were as advertised. It was brutal. It was difficult to watch. The thing that kept going through my mind is that this is a unit dedicated to stopping street crime, but the man that they assaulted, Tyre Nichols, committed no crime. The officers were aggressive from the start. They didn't let up. They were trying to establish control of the situation, and they lost it. And because they lost control of the situation, they took out their frustration on that young man. It's the other thing that occurred to me is the fact that this is a unit that was dedicated to stopping street crime, and they beat him like they knew they weren't going to get caught. They had body cameras, there were surveillance cameras everywhere. They seemed to not care or didn't remember that they might be recorded doing this vicious act. So that to me tells me that they've done this before, they've acted with impunity before, and this was nothing new for them to do.
There's been a lot of discussion about what to make of the racial element of this story. The narrative white cop kills unarmed black man is often the lens to which we view police misconduct. But trying to explain Nichols' horrific killing, allegedly at the hands of police who look just like him, is far more nuanced and complex. What's your best analysis based on the evidence we have so far?
Well, nuance and complex only begins to describe it. It's kind of a Rubik's Cube here because you have officers who are trained in a culture that was dedicated to be anti-black from the way a lot of people see it. The origins of the police, fugitive slave patrols, there is a culture that's embedded in the DNA in law enforcement in this country. Couple that with the fact that there are no national standards, couple that with the fact that you have these departments setting up rogue units that feel like they don't have to follow the rules, and coupled with the fact that a lot of the street justice that they administered was taught to them not in the academy but by training officers, and you get a point where you have internalized a lot of what the police culture means, a lot of what it means to be a part of police culture. We're talking about it in phrases of black versus blue, and within the department there's a lot of pressure for black officers to perform just like the white cops, adopt the same attitudes as the white cops, to not get ostracized within their own department. The other quick point that I might make is that here you have a black police chief who held black officers accountable. Now, if you can imagine, it's a very difficult thought experiment to reverse the races of the victim and the police officers. If the victim were white and the officers were black, who knows how swiftly they might have happened? Who knows if this would even happen to a white motorist? If you reverse the race of the cops and the victim, then we certainly have a more explosive situation if you have white officers beating to death a black man. But I think the fact that all the principles involved were of one race and that it was handled so swiftly, I think that de-escalated a lot of the confrontations that we might have had in protesting this particular incident.
When you look back to the response that, the killing of George Floyd got and other cases like this, but where it was a white police officer, how do you feel or compare the attention that this particular case is getting? Do you think that it's getting the reaction that it needs? There are protests, of course, but they're more subdued, passionate, but certainly more peaceful. What do you make of the reaction so far?
Well, I think the reaction has been strong. I think we would have had larger, more outrageous protests if the officers had been white. I think the protests would have been more widespread and more intense if it were summertime and not cool outside. I think that they did a lot to de-escalate. But the one point that I want to leave everyone with is that this has happened before. This will happen again. There's probably a young man out there right now who doesn't know it, who may become the next name that we have, that we know nationally because of something that police did to him that was unjust and ended with the end of his life. So I think unless we have proper reform, we're going to have more protests. We're going to have more victims. We're going to have more times where we're calling police to be held accountable, and those calls have fallen on deaf ears.
And let's hope we see some change. Thank you, Joseph, for your time. Really appreciate it. Joseph Williams there.